Hey everyone, happy college football. Welcome to Porcelain Picks. I'm your host, Andrew Fabian, and we are sitting here on the eve of week 1 action. We've got a major slate ahead of us. After a lackluster, sluggish week 0, we started off the year cold. 1-3 record last week. You already saw in Porcelain Audit. We take accountability for that. We pledge to do better this week and all season long because we at Porcelain Picks are here to bring you the locks you need as you scroll atop the porcelain throne. So, we've got a couple great picks coming in from Jersey Joe Mack. Joey Mack is back in action with us this year. Neither of his picks are Mack related. Well, actually, one of them is. We've got Ohio State Akron, which he's going to pick for us coming up shortly. But big slate ahead. We're going to start with the Friday night game, and I'm going to jump right in right now. Florida Atlantic at Michigan State. This is the sole Friday night matchup I'm going to pick for you today. We've got Florida Atlantic coming in as a 12.5-point underdog to Michigan State. Both teams have been riddled and decimated by transfers. Michigan State had about 36 players leave in the transfer portal. They brought in 25 new players. 4 of those players into their starting offensive lineup. 5 of those players into their starting defensive lineup. If you look at paper, if you look at brand, you take Michigan State here, but they've been through some turmoil lately. This is not a strong Michigan State team. They err a little bit better on the side of the offense, but I think we're going to see a little bit of a low-scoring matchup as these two teams struggle to get started. All right, defense is the strength of both programs. Historically, I think that'll be no different today. I think Florida Atlantic's going to show up prepared for this game. I think they're going to be good and sound on the defensive front. Their transfers are going to be ready to go. I like the under on this game. So for the Friday night game, we're going to go with a low-scoring affair. Over-unders at 45.5 right now. Take the under, lock it, flush it. Let's move on to Saturday. Big slate of action. We'll start with the noon kickoff games. And my alma mater, Penn State, is a 7.5-point favorite at the time of this recording at West Virginia. What's the significance of this line? All right, so this started, it was above a 10-point spread. Headed into a couple months ago, it's slowly crept down as money comes in on West Virginia. But if you've been with us last year, you know that James Franklin goes out of his way to cover spreads. It's a 7.5-point spread, I think, because Penn State had 3 offensive linemen leave the program. They're now in the NFL. They had a number of players on their defensive front and their defensive backfield go to the NFL as well. So this is a new-look Penn State offense. They also have a new-look offensive coordinator. So they brought in Andy Kotelnicki from Kansas. They also brought in Tom Allen to play defensive coordinator here in from Indiana. He was the head coach last year. So both sides of the ball, they've got new coordinators. So that could be a little bit why the uncertainty people have in Penn State and their expectations this year. However, I think those are both upgrades. Manny Diaz is the defensive coordinator. We all know he got plucked away by Duke. He is now their head coach. So that was a big loss for Penn State. He was a great defensive coordinator. However, Tom Allen is also an excellent defensive mind. I think he's going to be able to get the most out of these players. They're going to play a little bit more, they're going to play bigger and stronger rather than the slash and movement in the Manny Diaz defense. I think it's going to lead to a lot of sacks. It's going to lead to a lot of unforced errors and forced errors by opposing offenses. All right. Drew Aller is back, starting quarterback of Penn State. We know he was under some scrutiny last year, not being able to throw the ball downfield. I think that's where Kotelnicki comes in. He overachieved with a Kansas team as the offensive mind there. He got the most out of those players. Jackson Bean, that backup quarterback, he had him running and gunning, throwing the ball downfield. So I think we'll see a lot more shots by Drew Aller in this game to start the season, but really all season long. Name I want you to watch out for this season on the Penn State offense is Harrison Wallace. This guy is a wide receiver. He's going to be their number 1 target. They did bring in Julian Fleming, a transfer out of Ohio State, who was a 5-star recruit out of high school. I think Julian Fleming is going to be great in this offensive scheme. He's a really great blocking wide receiver, and that's going to come in handy in the running game. I think Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen are both going to be back to the 2-headed monster they were. I think defenses are going to have to stay honest to that passing game where they didn't have to do that last year. On the West Virginia side, they've got Garrett Green at quarterback. He's a returning starter. He's a gunslinger. The kid's 5'11". He slings the ball around. He can run out of the pocket. He's one of those guys that's just a fun college player to watch play. I think this is going to be a really nice matchup for him. I think he's going to be able to get the ball moving a little bit on Penn State's defense as they have that new look defense. But ultimately, I think Penn State squeezes the life out of he and his offense. I think Penn State's going to come up with a couple turnovers in this game. They're going to have at least 3 sacks of Garrett Green. West Virginia loses a lot in that secondary as well. They're replacing a depleted secondary unit. So I think this game could stay close for a half. I think West Virginia, at the home crowd, they're playing with a chip on their shoulder, but Penn State's going to be too much for them. I think Penn State wins by 2 scores. So that minus 7.5, I don't think Franklin's going to have any trouble covering that spread away at West Virginia. All right, so Penn State minus 7.5, lock it, flush it. Disclaimer, I did go to Penn State. I am a Penn State fan, so do with that what you will. All right, moving on to the other noon game, the biggest game, one of the biggest games of the day. We got Clemson and Georgia playing in Atlanta. This is Clemson at the time of this recording is a 12.5-point dog against Georgia. The over-under set at 48.5. Is this disrespect to Dabo Swinney and Clemson? Is this a sign that Georgia is really going to overachieve this year and they're head and shoulders above the rest? We're not sure yet. That's why we play the games on the field. But on the Clemson side of the ball, we've got Cade Klubnik coming back as the quarterback, the starter for this team. He played last year as well. Very good home quarterback, very ho-hum defensive quarterback. All right, so what I mean, or away quarterback. What I mean by that is he had 5 wins at home last year. He did not have a good showing on the road. I think Klubnik has also been reported to shred this Clemson defense in practice. So I think he's going to take a step forward. Clemson lost a lot of defensive players on that side of the football. I think Clemson is going to come into this game trying to slow the possessions here for Georgia, but they're going to have to push the envelope on the offensive side if they do want to win this game. On the Georgia side, you got Carson Beck. He's coming back. He's one of the Heisman favorites as a quarterback. Trevor Etienne, their transfer running back who came in. We know he's in some legal trouble. You've probably heard the reports of a lot of drunk driving incidents and Georgia's football program going through some issues there. So wouldn't be surprised if Trevor Etienne had to sit out for this game. But we'll see how that plays out. They did not release many details on that. But if that's the case, I think the running back room is a little bit depleted there on the Georgia side of the football. I think Carson Beck's going to have to air it out. I think he will air it out. And that Clemson secondary that's been shredded in practice by Klubnik, it's going to be no different with Carson Beck hitting those Georgia receivers. I like the over in this game. We saw a couple years ago, this was a 10-3 matchup. I think today or tomorrow it's going to go much higher. I think at 48.5 is too low. I think both teams put up well over 20 points in this game. I like the over 48.5. I'm also going to take Georgia minus 12.5. I think they pull away. I think they just have a better quality athlete, and Clemson not utilizing the transfer portal, I think is going to catch up with them. I think it did catch up with them last year. So Georgia minus 12.5. Lock it, flush it. The over 48.5. Lock it, flush it. Let's move to the 3:30 slate. All right, we've got Miami, the Hurricanes, at Florida, facing the Gators. All right, both coaches are said to be on the hot seat. All right, you got the Florida side of the football. Graham Mertz, the returning QB. I've been really critical of him over the past years, dating back to his Wisconsin days and then the Florida days last year. But he is a seasoned veteran here at the quarterback position with Florida. They've got a lot of speed on the outside, a lot of weapons. Eugene Wilson is a name to look out for this season. So I think Florida's offense will take a step forward. The defensive side, I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight here. Call me crazy, but when we look at Florida's defensive depth chart, we see a lot of size on that defensive line. And Billy Napier, the coach, told us that the strength and conditioning, they were trying to slim down their D linemen. That did not happen. Their nose tackle is weighing in at 445 pounds. Their defensive line is all well over 300 pounds. And why does that matter? You might think, they're going to stop the run in this game. They're really a bunch of dudes there. That's not the case. The heat is going to play a factor here. Miami likes to do the run and gun. Cam Ward is their new starting quarterback. They're going to dish it out with a tempo offense to those speedsters at the wide receiver position. And I think we'll see Florida's defensive linemen start to huff wind just the same way they did last year when Florida was beaten by Utah to start the year up in that high elevation of Utah. We saw Florida's defensive line get tired. That's going to happen again, and I don't think they have the rotational players who are going to pull it out. I really like Miami in this matchup. I think Mario Cristobal has his back against the wall. They have the much better roster. I think they are going to be in the running to win the ACC this year. They typically underperform, as we know. Mario Cristobal might have kind of a big head, but I think Miami and the Hurricanes are going to take this one. -2.5. Take Miami, lock it, flush it. All right, we're moving on. We've got Jersey Joey Mack, his 2 picks coming up. All right, the first pick, we've got Akron traveling to Ohio State to face the Buckeyes. Real national title contender. I think this offense is really deep. The wide receiver position is like no other. Buckeyes are a 48.5-point favorite hosting Akron. They've got Will Howard, the new quarterback transfer in from Kansas State. Travion Henderson, we know that name. He's a great running back that's been with the Ohio State program for some years. But they also brought in Quinshawn Judkins, our boy. We talked about him all year last year. I think this is a two-headed monster. I think they're both going to get 2 scores in this game. Ohio State, Joey Mack's pick, -48.5. Lock it, flush it. That's the first Joey Mack pick of the year. And this is my addition to this. I like Ohio State -27.5 in the first half of this game. Okay, so you can lock both of those, flush both of those. We're going to move on. Jersey Joey Mack, his second pick. This one is not a Maction pick, but Louisville -36.5. Take them above Austin Peay. Austin Peay State, they have an assistant coach who apparently just got caught in a sex trafficking scandal. Their head coach last year, who left the program, brought a bunch of players with him. More to come on that upcoming. But take Louisville -36.5. You could lock that. You could flush that. All right. So we're jumping in. Another 3:30 game. This is where I am making this pick. Joey Mack went to Miami, Ohio. He never picks in that game. I like Miami, Ohio at Northwestern. We're going to take the Redhawks +3.5 at Northwestern, and we're going to take the under in that game, 39.5. Lock those, flush those. We've got Brett Gabbert on the Miami, Ohio side of the game, the real Miami. This kid is a seasoned veteran. He's a gamer. He's a fifth-year senior. He's going to go out with a bang. And Miami, Ohio, in my estimation, is going to win the MAC this year. And it starts with a big win against a middling Big Ten team. All right, Northwestern is a sleeper. It's a snooze fest. Their main stadium is undergoing renovation, so this is going to be in a different one. I don't think the fans are going to come out for this game, so that's why I love Miami, Ohio, 3.5. Lock it, flush it. And then the under, 39.5. Lock it, flush it. All right, we're going to move on. We've got UTEP at Nebraska. I'm going to roll a little quickly through this one. Nebraska is a 27.5-point favorite. Their new quarterback, Dylan Raiola, is going to come in and give some havoc to UTEP. Their offense is really expected to be solid this year, and I think they're going to take off the training wheels in this first game against UTEP. I teased before Austin Peay, their head coach, left. He came to UTEP. He brought in a whole new offensive line from a terrible team last year in Austin Peay. So I think that's going to be a really tough matchup with Nebraska's defense, especially in front of the Cornhusker crowd. So take Nebraska -27.5. Lock it, flush it. We're moving on. We've got some more SEC play. Western Kentucky comes into Alabama. It's the Kalen DeBoer era. Nick Saban is no more. 31.5-point dogs at Western Kentucky. You know that Bama's got the players. They've got that roster. Jalen Milroe, plenty of weapons back. Kalen DeBoer, we saw he had great success at Washington with Michael Penix Jr. last year. A lot of folks think Alabama's going to take a step back under Kalen DeBoer. We don't think so in the long run, but it might be a little slow with that new system in place. But really, taking you to the Western Kentucky side of the football, TJ Finley is in. He's the starting quarterback. He was at Texas State last year. He's been a journeyman. He's been at Auburn. We know he's one of those 7-year guys in college, so he's mature. Last year, he actually came into the season from Texas State. They were at Baylor in the first game of the year. He was a two-score underdog, and they actually won that game outright. So I think TJ Finley's maturity is going to keep this team in the game for a little bit longer than they should. They may lose by 30 points, but they're not going to lose by 31.5. So take Western Kentucky, 31.5, lock it, flush it, all right? We're going to move into the night slate. We've got a big matchup, probably the biggest one of the day. Notre Dame going to Kyle Field to face Texas A&M. Huge matchup. Notre Dame's a top 10 team. Texas A&M's ranked 20th or 22nd in the country. Notre Dame's right now a 2.5-point underdog traveling to Kyle Field. This is a night game. It's under the lights. You've got a big matchup here. First game of the season. That's why the spread's where it's at. I think on a neutral field, it might be a pick 'em or Notre Dame favored by a point or two, but it's going to be a raucous atmosphere. You also have returning quarterback for A&M and Connor Weigman. They lost Evan Stewart. They lost a couple other weapons to the transfer portal. You got Jimbo Fisher as your head coach. These guys bring in 5-star players like it's nobody's business. So you know that they have the matchup potential here. On the Notre Dame side of the ball, you got Riley Leonard. He's the Duke quarterback from last year who beat Clemson in the first game of the year. He had an excellent season until he was injured, screwed up his leg. All signs point to him being at 100% for the Irish. But they have a whole new offensive line. 4 or 5 guys are gone. They're just like Penn State where they're churning these guys into the NFL, but their defense continues to be sharp. I really like 2 picks in this game. And I would take A&M, but I have no faith in Jimbo Fisher to win the big games and actually put this team together and put them in a position to win and do well in the SEC. So I'm going to take 2 picks here. I'm not going to pick the spread here. I'm going to take the under for the entire game, 47.5. I think this is a defensive battle. It's the strong suits working out the kinks. I think we have a low-scoring affair. I'm also going to take the Notre Dame team total under 22.5. So I think this could be an A&M win by a razor-thin margin. I think they might cover the spread, and I think they hold Notre Dame without 22.5 points. So take those 2 picks. This could be a 1-score game either way, a 1-point game either way. Take the under 47.5. Take Notre Dame's under 22.5. Lock those, flush those. Let's move on to the Sunday night game. We've got game Sunday and Monday as well. This is really a marathon this weekend. Happy week 1. We've got LSU and USC. They're playing in Vegas. I'll go a little quicker with this one. We got over 64.5 is the pick here. It's going to be a shootout. You know, on USC side, they lost Caleb Williams. You know, Jaden Daniels is gone from LSU. The last 2 Heisman Trophy winners came from this matchup. But Garrett Nussmeier with LSU, he's a journeyman. He's been around this program. They're really excited about him. USC's got Miller Moss. We saw he threw 6 touchdowns in the bowl game against Louisville. Caleb Williams, who I think both teams possess weapons at the wide receiver position, and I don't buy the coach speak that either side had improvements in the defensive side of the ball to keep this game under. 64.5 is your total. Take the over, lock it, flush it. Last game, keep it quick. Boston College at Florida State. 16.5-point favorites are the Seminoles. I take Florida State minus 16.5, lock it, flush it. DJU is going to be let loose to throw the ball a little bit more downfield. He was throwing some dink and dunk stuff last week against Georgia Tech. This team's going to be angry. They're going to be craving a victory in a big way. They're going to pile it on in the second half. Florida State minus 16.5, lock it, flush it. All right, that's a big slate. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're going to keep it rolling all season long. We got Joey Mack picks in. And we've got the Porcelain Picks. We've got the locks you need as you scroll atop the Porcelain Throne. Happy college football, everyone. Let's go.